My professor failed me for refusing his advances. I got him fired and earned my PhD. The words had been playing on repeat in my mind for weeks as I drafted the email that would change everything. They weren't just a statement of fact, they were my manifesto, my promise to myself. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly as adrenaline coursed through my veins. 3 years of humiliation, self-doubt, and rage distilled into one meticulously crafted message with 19 attachments. Send. I remember the exact moment everything changed. 3 years ago, on a Tuesday afternoon in October, the maple trees outside Davidson Hall blazing crimson and gold. I'd worn my favorite navy blazer, professional but not stuffy, for my scheduled meeting with Professor Richard Harmon to discuss my dissertation proposal. The department's academic star, editorial board member for 3 prestigious journals, recipient of the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Research for 2 consecutive years. And my academic advisor, the man who held my entire future in his manicured hands. The memory still sends electricity down my spine. The way his eyes changed when he closed his office door, lingering on the lock a second too long. How he moved his chair from behind his desk to sit beside me, close enough that I could smell the cinnamon gum on his breath. The casual touch on my shoulder that slid down my arm. His voice dropping to a register I'd never heard from him before. Your research shows extraordinary promise. I see something special in you. I could open doors for you that you can't imagine. We could work very closely together. My body understood before my brain did. Goosebumps erupting across my skin. Stomach clenching into a hard knot. That strange metallic taste that floods your mouth when danger presents itself dressed as opportunity. I shifted away, redirecting the conversation to my methodology section with a steadiness in my voice that surprised me. His expression flickered. Confusion, then something harder. He leaned back, arms crossing over his chest, face reconfiguring into academic formality so quickly I almost questioned what I'd seen moments before. Almost. The following weeks unfolded like a slow-motion car crash I could see coming but couldn't prevent. My emails about dissertation feedback went unanswered. In departmental meetings, my contributions were met with surgical dissection, each flaw in my reasoning highlighted for everyone to witness. His previous enthusiasm about my research hypothesis transformed into pointed skepticism. Then came the evaluation of my dissertation proposal. Insufficient theoretical grounding, methodological flaws, lacks academic rigor, not of the caliber expected at this institution. Recommendation: fail. I still have that document, tucked away in a folder labeled Evidence. The paper itself has crease marks from where I gripped it too tightly, my tears having left small warped circles on the second page. The department's policy required unanimous committee approval for a student to continue after a failed proposal. Professor Harmon, as committee chair, had effectively ended my academic career with a few taps on his keyboard. 4 years of graduate work, my research, my future, all of it erased because I wouldn't play his game. That night remains a blur of half-remembered moments. The walk home through campus, unseeing, my body moving on autopilot. The bottle of Merlot I'd been saving to celebrate my proposal approval emptied instead into a coffee mug because finding a wine glass seemed too complicated. Calling my mother at 2 a.m., unable to tell her the full truth, just that there had been complications with my committee. Her voice, sleepy but instantly alert with concern. What happened, honey? You can start over, can't you? Start over. As if my research could be replaced like a lost umbrella. As if the years invested were monopoly money I could just collect again after circling the board. I slept on the bathroom floor that night, the cool tiles a relief against my feverish skin. When morning came, it brought with it a clarity that felt almost supernatural. The crushing despair of the previous night had hardened into something else, a cold, razor-sharp focus. He believed he was untouchable. After all, it would be his word against mine, the celebrated professor versus the failed graduate student, a narrative as old as academia itself. But I was no longer the person who had walked into his office that Tuesday. That woman, trusting, naive, believing in the sanctity of the academic relationship, she was gone. In her place stood someone new. Someone who understood that justice doesn't simply arrive, it must be engineered, constructed with the same careful precision as a dissertation. I began my research that morning, not the research I had hoped would define my academic legacy, but a different kind altogether. The university's sexual harassment policies, the reporting structures, The historical outcomes of complaints against tenured faculty, the evidence standards, the statute of limitations. My apartment transformed into an investigator's office. Timelines covered my walls. Every meeting, every email, every interaction with Professor Harmon meticulously documented. I created spreadsheets tracking his office hours, his class schedule, his committee assignments. I compiled a list of his current and former advisees, focusing on those whose academic progress had stalled unexpectedly or who had left the program without explanation. I started carrying a small notebook everywhere. Each night, I would transcribe my observations into a digital log, categorized by date, time, and potential relevance. Every interaction with the professor was recorded immediately afterward, capturing exact phrases, body language, witnesses present. The research was therapeutic in its own way. The methodical gathering and organization of data gave me purpose, transforming my helpless rage into productive energy. I was no longer just a victim. I was building a case. And with each piece of evidence I collected, I felt more in control. I learned to navigate campus like a ghost, avoiding his usual paths while keeping him in my peripheral awareness. I perfected the art of the stone face, revealing nothing during the few unavoidable interactions in departmental functions. I became a student of his behavioral patterns, noting which faculty members he was close to, which administrators he had influence over, where the potential allies and obstacles in my path might lie. What surprised me most during those first months of planning was the discovery that I wasn't alone. It started with Emma, a brilliant second year who had suddenly transferred to another university last semester. My message to her was carefully worded, expressing concern about my own difficulties with Professor Harmon without explicitly making accusations. Her reply came within hours, "Call me. I think we have the same problem." Over the next several weeks, a network emerged, 5 women spanning 7 years of Professor Harmon's teaching career, each with her own story, each who had chosen silence, believing herself to be an isolated incident, weighing her academic future against the uncertain outcome of speaking out against a powerful man. We formed a private group, sharing experiences, comparing notes, building a composite picture of a predator hiding behind academic prestige. The pattern was undeniable, evolving from inappropriate comments to more explicit propositions, with professional retaliation against those who refused. The man had been operating with impunity for nearly a decade, his behavior an open secret among students, but seemingly invisible to the administration. Our virtual meetings became a strange combination of support group and strategic planning session. The weight of isolation lifted as we realized the power in our collective experience. His most effective weapon had been our silence and our shame. Together we began dismantling both. Still, building the case took patience. We needed more than stories. We needed evidence that could withstand scrutiny. I reached out to a former undergraduate teaching assistant who had worked closely with the professor, asking innocuous questions about his grading practices before carefully steering the conversation toward his interactions with female students. He had noticed things. Of course he had, and had his own set of uncomfortable memories to contribute. By month 4 of my investigation, I had established a relationship with Dr. Eleanor Weiss, the university's newly appointed Title IX coordinator. Our first meeting was ostensibly about general departmental climate issues, my name just one on a list of graduate students providing feedback. I observed her carefully, her responses, her level of engagement, whether she seemed more loyal to students or to protecting the institution. Only after 2 more meetings did I feel confident enough to share the first layer of my concerns about Professor Harmon. She listened intently, asking detailed questions without promising outcomes. I left her office both hopeful and wary. The system had failed others before. I couldn't trust it completely now. But Dr. Weiss represented a potential official channel through which justice might flow, if properly directed. Meanwhile, I continued my graduate studies. I couldn't allow my academic progress to stall completely, even with the setback of my failed proposal. I approached another professor, Dr. Lydia Chen, whose feminist approach to research methodology had always resonated with me, about potentially taking over as my advisor. I was honest about having had a professional disagreement with Professor Harmon, but kept the details vague. She agreed to review my work independently. "Doctor, Chen's feedback was transformative. Where Professor Harmon had seen fatal flaws, she saw innovative approaches that needed refinement. Under her unofficial guidance, I began reshaping my proposal, strengthening the theoretical framework while maintaining the core of my original research vision. The dual tracks of my life, student by day, investigator by night, created a strange cognitive dissonance. I would spend mornings in the library, deep in academic research, then switch to combing through university policy documents and building my case in the afternoons. My sleep suffered. My social life became non-existent. But the cold clarity that had arrived that morning on my bathroom floor never wavered. 6 months into my investigation, we had our first breakthrough. Jenna, one of the women in our group, discovered her old phone containing text messages from the professor that crossed every professional boundary. Another former student had kept emails with similar content, saved just in case. A third had audio recordings of meetings where his tone and suggestions couldn't be misinterpreted. I compiled everything, organizing the evidence chronologically to demonstrate the pattern and escalation over time. We now had documented incidents spanning 8 years, affecting 7 women, with supporting statements from 3 witnesses. The case was no longer one person's word against his. It was a comprehensive dossier of predatory behavior. The timing needed to be perfect. I consulted with an attorney specializing in academic sexual harassment cases, using my rapidly dwindling savings to pay for 3 hours of her time. Her advice was pragmatic. Understand that the university's first instinct would be self-protection, prepare for character assassination, and leverage the threat of public exposure without immediately resorting to it. I waited until 2 weeks before the next Board of Trustees meeting, when the university would be particularly sensitive to potential scandal. I scheduled a formal meeting with Dr. Weiss, bringing with me a binder containing a carefully selected subset of our evidence, enough to establish the severity and pattern of behavior without revealing our full hand. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Dr. Weiss's expression remained professional, but I caught the momentary widening of her eyes when she realized the scope of what we had documented. By the end, she assured me the university would conduct a thorough investigation. I nodded politely, then left her with my attorney's business card on top of the binder. What followed was 2 months of procedural purgatory. Formal statements, follow-up questions, character references. Each woman in our group was interviewed separately, our stories cross-referenced for consistency. Professor Harmon was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation's outcome, a development that sent ripples of speculation throughout the department. The whispers began immediately. Had you heard about Harmon? Administrative leave. Something about inappropriate behavior with students. Always thought he was too charming for his own good. Never trusted him around the female graduate students. Really? I'm shocked. He was always professional with me. The investigation expanded beyond our original group as the university, now legally obligated to pursue all potential incidents, reached out to other former students. 3 more women came forward. The case grew stronger with each new account. Professor Harmon's response was predictable. He hired an aggressive attorney who specialized in defending academics against cancel culture. They portrayed him as a dedicated mentor being victimized by disgruntled students who had failed to meet academic standards. They questioned our motives, our mental health, our academic abilities. They demanded access to our complete academic records, our personal communications, our medical histories. The university, to their credit, held firm on protecting our privacy while continuing the investigation. Perhaps they recognized the liability they faced if they appeared to enable retaliation. Perhaps Dr. Weiss was truly committed to addressing the issue. Whatever the reason, the process continued despite the professor's attempts to derail it. Throughout this period, I maintained my academic work under Dr. Chen's guidance. My revised proposal took shape, incorporating her suggestions while preserving my original research questions. When she deemed it ready, she helped me identify 2 other professors who might be willing to join a new committee, ones known for their academic integrity and who weren't particularly close to Professor Harmon. The official verdict came 9 months after I had first begun gathering evidence. The university's investigation substantiated the claims of harassment and retaliation, finding that Professor Harmon had engaged in a pattern of inappropriate behavior inconsistent with the university's policies and community standards. He was terminated, his tenure revoked, a rare and significant action in academia. The news broke on a Wednesday morning. By afternoon, my inbox was flooded with messages from fellow graduate students, ranging from congratulations to thinly veiled accusations that we had destroyed a great man's career. The department called an emergency meeting to address the transition, carefully avoiding any direct acknowledgement of why the transition was necessary. I sat in the back row of that meeting, watching my colleagues process the news. Some looked shocked, others knowing, a few triumphant. I felt oddly detached, as though observing the scene from a great distance. The emotional catharsis I had expected didn't arrive. Instead, I experienced a quiet certainty that justice, however imperfect, had been served. With Professor Harmon gone, the path to reconstituting my dissertation committee opened. Dr. Chen officially became my advisor, bringing with her 2 colleagues who reviewed my revised proposal with genuine academic interest rather than personal agenda. Their feedback was constructive, challenging but fair. 3 months later, my proposal was approved unanimously. The work that followed was the most intellectually fulfilling of my academic career. Free from the shadow of harassment and retaliation, I immersed myself in my research. The dissertation took shape over the next 18 months, a stronger, more rigorous study than my original concept had been. When I finally defended it, standing before my committee with confidence I had thought lost forever, I knew I had reclaimed not just my academic future, but something more fundamental: my belief in my own voice. The day I received my PhD, walking across the stage to accept the hood and diploma, I scanned the audience out of habit, half expecting to see Professor Harmon's face glaring back at me. He wasn't there, of course. Instead, I saw the women from our group, scattered throughout the crowd, each giving me the same knowing smile. We had done this together, not just secured my degree, but changed the environment for those who would come after us. The university never officially acknowledged the full extent of what had happened. There was no public apology to the affected students, no systemic review of how a predator had operated unchecked for so long. The administration's approach was to treat it as an isolated incident rather than a symptom of deeper institutional failures. Some things hadn't changed, but other things had. The department instituted new policies for advisor-advisee relationships, with clear reporting structures and regular check-ins with graduate program directors. Student representatives were added to previously faculty-only committees. The power dynamics hadn't been eliminated, but they had been recognized and partially addressed. As for me, I accepted a postdoctoral position at another university, ready for a fresh start while carrying the lessons of the past 3 years with me. The experience had transformed me in ways that extended beyond my academic identity. I had discovered reserves of resilience and strategic thinking I hadn't known I possessed. I had learned that systems protect themselves unless forced to change, that documentation is power, and that collective action can succeed where individual complaints fail. Sometimes I wonder who I would have become if Professor Harmon had never closed that office door, if my academic journey had proceeded along its expected path. I'll never know that version of myself. Instead, I know this one. A scholar whose research was forged in adversity, a woman who helped break a cycle of abuse, a person who discovered that justice can be engineered when it isn't freely given. My professor failed me for refusing his advances. I got him fired and earned my PhD. It wasn't just what happened. It was what I made happen through months of meticulous work, strategic patience, and the courage to stand firm when the easier path would have been surrender. The title of my dissertation will appear on my CV, but these other words, this other story, will always be the one that truly defines my education.